Well, folks, we have a patch coming to Hearthstone, and in fact, might already be here, depending on when you watch this. But some changes coming to Battlegrounds and Duels. A lot of changes coming to Battlegrounds, in fact, and a few changes coming to Duels. Now, this one was a bit of a surprise for me. I didn't know this was hitting today. I, in fact, already put out a video today. That one might get a little lost in the shuffle, but I did include a link down in the description and pinned comment if you want to hear me talking about the death of standard format in Hearthstone, which is a little ironic given we're getting a balance changes here for Battlegrounds and Duels, but not standard. That said, we just got some for standard, so that does make sense. So let's go ahead and dive into these patch notes. I think we'll kick it off with Duels because there's only a few changes, and most of you are probably a little more Duels forward than Battlegrounds. So for Duels, change number 1, the passive treasures that were supposed to be moved to Pool 2 Ultra Rare in a previous patch are actually being moved to Tier 2. This time we're told it didn't go through last time for Battle Totem, Disc of Legend, and Totem of the Dead. So now that these are actually going to be Ultra Rare, that should be a huge change on the meta. Battle Totem in particular, powering like Pirate Warriors and Hero Power Mages, and Disc of Legend has been insane with Vandar. Totem of the Dead occasionally breaks some things too. So those will be super hard to find, which I think is going to be healthy for the game. Also, Battle Tactics, Vandar's crazy broken hero power that I finally got to play for the first time yesterday, just in time before it got nerfed, by the way, is getting a change. Instead of discounting all of the neutral minions in hand that cost 4 or more, it's now going to only reduce 2 neutral minions in hand. So that's significant. You can still sometimes isolate those discounts down to a couple key minions and cheat things out quickly, which, you know, that's the design of the hero power. I'm glad it still has some utility, but you won't be able to just discount 5, 6, whatever things in hand and dump all of them over, 2 or 3 successive turns and just completely overwhelm your opponents with giant stuff. And in fact, if you're running a lot of big minions in hand, you're going to have some consistency issues because you're going to be hitting those random targets in hand, which means sometimes, minion number 1 might get a discount, and then minion number 3, and then minion number 6, and you're going to be spreading those discounts across a wider array of minions, which means none of them are going to be getting discounted as significantly as quickly as before, therefore making it harder to cheat them out sooner. So we might see a shift in the kinds of deck building we see for this one. In other words, like instead of running every giant minion, maybe just running, 4 or 5 key minions and hoping to get 2 of them in hand early and like putting your buffs on specifically those 2. So you always have that big Yashiraj to cheat out early, as opposed to, just whatever you can dump into the deck like we saw before. So I do indeed think this is going to significantly alter the Duels meta and power level a lot in a very good way. Now, moving on to Battlegrounds, there are a lot of changes to the buddies here. Buddies, I'm not super up to date on the Battlegrounds discussion, like what do people think about it, but I've heard some mixed opinions here and there. I think people were excited for buddies because they were so game changing, but I've also seen a lot of complaints regarding how they've shifted Battlegrounds into this like hyper tempo world, and it's really hard to do like fun, greedy late game builds at this point. Also, they are a little bit snowbally, where if you get out ahead early and you get your buddy faster, you just kind of snowball to victory much more easily. So some changes here to balance things out, slow things down might be good, and a lot of buddies are getting a tier up in particular, which will slow down how quickly you're getting the buddy. Also a big change here, Archdruid Hamul has been removed from the minion pool. I think this might be because a lot of the buddies are minion typed, and say like if you're Captain Cookie in a Murloc lobby, or in a non-Murloc lobby, for instance, your buddy is a Murloc, so if you use Hamul with your buddy, you're going to get Amalgadons. And there's like these crazy, multiple Amalgadon Hamul boards and stuff. That's probably part of it. It might just also be a change for consistency in the late game. A little sad to lose Hamul, frankly, because I think Hamul was really fun to help you shore up a build and find that stuff late, increasing the consistency at tier 6, but that's okay. If it's good for the game overall, sounds fine to me. Now, in regards to the buddies themselves, a lot of changes. I'm going to try to go through these fairly quickly. I kind of reviewed them ahead of time, so I'd be able to talk a little more easily. For Maleficent, Elementium Squirrel Bomb is going to be dealing 3 damage instead of 4 damage. This one was really strong. I mean, a 25% nerf is nothing to scoff at, but I still feel like this has a lot of potential to just crazy blow things up when it works really well. So, you know, there are some small breakpoints in the mid game where this probably matters, like dealing 3 versus 4 might not kill certain things. Like, you know, suddenly that Bran doesn't get sniped and you take 5 extra damage or whatever. That adds up a little bit over time. But it's also just total output is like 25% lower in the late game when you're spreading it across multiple giant things. So that might make a surprisingly big difference. For the Illidari here for Illidan, a pretty interesting mechanical change. So before, this was Tavern Tier 2. It's also going to Tavern Tier 3, so it's going to be getting it a little later. On top of that, before this had Wingman, which is the hero power, also gives immune while attacking. So that would, of course, affect the left and rightmost minions, for Illidan giving you 2 immune while attacking. Now, Illidari says, your first minion that attacks has immune while attacking. So it's no longer connected to the hero power specifically, and it's only going to be 1 minion instead of both, which has 2 important implications. Basically halves the value of this for Illidan because this was like crazy strong in OP. But also anybody who like copies this or steals it or whatever, Murazons it, they're going to be able to use it. Before it was connected to the hero power. If you didn't have that hero power, it didn't work. Now it's just your first minion that attacks. So people stealing this actually get some cool utility out of this buddy, which could be really fun. AFK's buddy is going to give +2 health instead of just +1 health on this buff. Still, of course, +1 attack. I'm still not convinced this one makes a lot of sense being locked to tier 3, but, you know, doubling the health here could definitely increase the survivability of your board, maybe give you some time to push up a tier, do some cool stuff as you move away from tier 3. Captain Fairmount for Cariel Rome is going to buff 5 minions instead of 3. I think that's actually pretty significant. It's still not like full Light Fang status, but a golden one would be, but you don't have to have minion types, of course. So, like, once you triple this out, like, is that kind of good? Just any minions you want, whatever build you're supporting, it's like still going to give you a Light Fang buff. Light Fang doesn't really keep up to the modern era of Battlegrounds, but I'm like sort of intrigued by this one. I don't know, keep an eye on this. I think this is something you could keep in a build and not feel bad about it, particularly as a golden version. The ticket collector for Ticketus seems really cool now. I don't know about power level. In general, power level here is going to be really hard to assess because there's so many variables changing. Who knows what it's going to look like, but it's really fun. Instead of discovering a prize from your most recent prize turn, now you're going to get one from the next prize turn, which some of those, like the 3rd and 4th tier prize turns could be really significant. And getting like a 4th tier prize off this could be really, really strong, especially if you get 3 of them, for instance, across the 3 bodies here. That's wild. I think that looks really, really fun and enjoyable. So I'm excited to actually try this one out once it gets changed. The Muckslinger for Shutterwalk is getting an intriguing change. Before, you would play a minion, and then you get a battle cry added to Bob's Tavern. Now, after you play a minion, you're still going to get a battle cry added, but it's going to get +2/+2. So, like a stat buff on the battle cries that get added. Now, that's intriguing, right? Because normally you're just cycling through the battle cries anyway. You're not really keeping them around on board, so I don't really know if those stats are going to be like sticking around or stacking up very much. It's maybe like a very brief short-term kind of shore up of your board, I guess. Best case, like a slightly stronger minion if you finish on one of these battle cries. And then for golden, of course, it's going to give +4/+4. So I don't know how often battle cry minions are actually sticking in board. I think, you know, like Annihilan Battle Masters, like, okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, kidding. Some extra attack on a Battle Master could be big, but that's not really a key minion these days. So I'm intrigued by the use case on this one. I guess one distinction I didn't notice here at first. It says after you play a minion, add 2 Battlecry minions for golden, but the new golden's only going to have 1 Battlecry minion. So maybe this was a sneaky way to make this a bit of a nerf to the golden version, so you're getting less Battlecries and resources, but getting, you know, a little bit given back to you in stats, which might be a bad exchange for the golden version here in particular, which as a tier 2, it's not too hard to get this in gold. So I bet that's actually what's happening here. A little bit of a nerf with kind of a compensatory +4/+4 buff. Krabby here is going up a tier to slow it down and losing some attack as well, which is going to make it much weaker on board from a tempo standpoint. Right now, it feels like Krabby is just insanely overpowering. Good stats on board. Of course, the buff can be nuts, so good change there to slow this one down. Carl is getting the same treatment, going up a tier to Tavern Tier 4, losing a bunch of attack, making him notably weaker on board. As a Divine Shield minion in particular, because you're usually giving this guy Divine Shield pretty quickly, His high base attack did matter a lot, I think. So that's a significant change. Zyrella's Baby Elec is going to Tavern Tier 3, so just slowing that one down a little bit. That thing could get pretty big pretty fast. Mishmash, same story, going to Tavern Tier 3 and losing a little bit of base stats. So a significant tempo hit here to Mishmash. Valithria, Ysera's buddy, is going to Tier 4. It's actually getting some tempo buff here, but of course coming in much later as well. So a little bit of upside, a little bit of downside. Ultimately still though, Tavern Tier 4 is a big change. I think you got to count that one a nerf. Master Gadrin is going to Tavern Tier 4, so slowing down Gadrin. Arfis going to Tavern Tier 3, slowing that one down. Tuskar Raider for patches going to Tavern Tier 4. I think that's particularly significant for the golden one, right? Like, pushing that back a turn or two can make a really big difference, because when you get like 2 of those and you maybe have had time to find a brand or something, you get some crazy stats out of this dude. So I think that's a big deal. The Bilgewater Mogul for Gallywix going to Tavern Tier 4, kind of the same story here as with the Tuskar Raider. The Sparkfin Soothsayer, this one's crazy, just losing 2 attack. That's all. Just a slightly weaker tempo minion. I think it's funny how subtle that change is. Asher the Haberdasher just getting a slight decline in stats here to 2-2. That probably won't make too much difference. Magnus going to Tier 3, so slowing down the Magnus a little bit. The Unearthed Underling going to Tier 4, same story, pushing it back a little bit. Tess's Hunter of Old actually getting buffed up to Tavern Tier 3. I really did feel like this guy was pretty awkward and had some weird ups. Like, a lot of the buddies just don't really do a lot for you if they're like hero power specific and stuff. So happy to see him buffed a little. Warden Fellwater for Scabs, same story, going to Tavern Tier 3. These are also kind of like value cards in a lot of ways. They need more time to spin up, particularly because they're start of turn effects. So moving those up a tier, I think, makes a lot of sense. I know they both felt awkward when I was playing those. Flight Trainer for Galewang getting a very tiny stat buff, a little bonus onboard value there. Baby Kodo is going to Tier 3 instead of Tier 4. I haven't played this one yet. I don't think this is going to make Baby Kodo rock anybody's world, though. Lady Sinestra is going to a 1-6 instead of a 3-8, but also going up in Tavern Tier, or down, I guess you'd say. She's faster. You're going to get Lady Sinestra a lot faster, which I think is a big deal. You get the right early Avenge setup with like tokens and stuff. You can have really big boards that are still farming Avenge really nicely. And she remains a 4-6 pretty early on, which isn't too shabby. Lil KT is getting a health buff. Okay, it's fine. Junior Navigator, I'm intrigued by this one a lot, actually. Going from Tavern Tier 3 to Tavern Tier 2. I feel like there's something with Junior Navigator where it's like, man, this feels like it's going to be really close to being good to me. This might make the difference. Tavern Tier 2 is going to be coming in quick. And getting these maps like a turn faster, getting them discounted a turn faster, getting more maps a turn faster, I think it's going to create some really big swing opportunities. So I would say keep an eye on Junior Navigator. I'm not a Battlegrounds expert by any means, but from what I have played, I feel like there's an opportunity here with this one at Tavern Tier 2 to be pretty exciting. Sklib is also going down to 2 to get a lot faster. Not losing much in stats along the way either, so that's pretty nice. She didn't lose much either. So, yeah, intriguing. I think there is a world where this lets you get a build going much, much faster because you're refreshing so efficiently. This one, another one that seems like it might be really, really good. The piloted Whirlotron going down to Tier 2. Just getting some quick tempo out of the Whirlotron. Not convinced he's going to rock the world either, but seems fine. The Apostle of Galakron is getting a tier advantage, going down to 2, losing little stats along the way, but who cares? This one isn't really a stat-based card. So I like this, allowing you to accelerate into a nice refresh turn. I think this card's like slept on a little bit. I feel like you can set up some good little board states to get some key tier 5s or tier 4s or whatever that are really nice. So being able to do that faster could be good. That said, again, if you haven't had time to tier up yet, this might be kind of sitting dead for a while anyway, so maybe it doesn't always help you, right? Senior Tomb Diver for Reno going to Tier 2, losing some stats along the way, but that's actually almost helpful. If this ever survives an attack against like an Acolyte of Cthulhu, the 2/2 Taunt Reborn, now it won't do that, right? So you're both getting it faster and there's upside. I think in particular putting like an Avenge unit on the far right, goldening it with an Avenge board can be really cool for this one, so keep an eye on the Tomb Diver. And then finally, the Evergreen Botany is getting a big old stat buff. He's a 9/7. I think the biggest buddy by stats, which I don't think will make a big difference here. Tier 4 already, boards are starting to scale quite a bit, and I don't know that 2 extra attack is going to make a huge difference, but it's a little bit in Omu's favor. Beyond that, some general bug fixes and game improvements for various, I guess there's some heroic bounty stuff in Mercenaries. Bladestorm's going up to 50, which can matter with things like Yogs are on lately, clearing a big Yogg that ate a board. Killrack for Jiraxxus kind of getting nerfed here through this bug fix a little bit. And yeah, sometimes Alakir's spirit guy would buff enemy units if there were like full divine shields on his own side of the board. So good changes there. I am, of course, very intrigued to see how this all shakes out in the world of Battlegrounds. It's a lot of changes to parse through, so maybe it'll make it feel a little more balanced. And I think slow things down a little too might be nice. A lot of things went up in tier, so if that works, that will make Battlegrounds a better world. And I think Duels is going to be awesome too. So share your thoughts on these patch notes, of course, down in the comments below. Thanks much as always for watching, and until next time, game on.